Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our weekly presentation here on the Real Yoga Mission channel. We're offering a free gift during today's presentation of the book called Shut Up and Chant. All we ask is you leave us your email address below in the comments or give us a way to get in touch with you of how you'd like to receive this free PDF. This book actually exploded worldwide about more than 28 years ago. And now in these modern days, we're seeing a giant resurgence of this book. So now we have here Anandinath Babaji, where the book was transmitted through.
Greetings, friends, and thank you for joining today. Listen carefully. The mind is very stupid. What shall I do? I would persuade it in 100 ways if I could. I would slap it on the cheeks when obstinate. I would make it forget everything by the intoxication of devotional songs in the service of Lord Hari. Or perhaps I shall kill it and feed it into the immortal bliss, the graveyard of Satchit Ananda Sundram. O Anandinath, oh my love, dreams do come true.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us, Anandinath. And now I'm going to read you a little bit of this introduction of this classic Shut Up and Chant. Okay, introduction. This small book is called Shut Up and Chant. To some people, this may seem like a rather harsh title for a book. It is a request to the mind and tongue and the vocal cords and the lips to please serve me in the best way possible. The mind is very obstinate and strong. It must be beaten with a shoe daily just to get it to behave a little for our own benefit and the benefit of others. To chant is to commune with God, to hear his sweet and beneficial advice. If the mind is too busy with so-called spiritual thoughts, how can it be listening carefully to God's name and ultimately her voice? For the last 40 years, the author here has chanted daily God's name 27,648 times a day, also known as 32 rounds a day. It does not matter who they are or where they live or who knows them. What matters is that this process is known as japa, and that all the great spiritual masters of all traditions practically have recommended it for direct communion with God and the universe. It doesn't make you great or smart. In fact, it makes you feel rather small and dumb, but full of ecstasy and love. The ancient scriptures describe in very simple terms how this can happen to anyone who chants God's name. So let us all do ourselves a favor. Let us transcend the incessant ramblings of the mind and mouth. Let's just shut up and chant in great happiness and joy, and try to forgive ourselves and everyone to acquire the sweet blessings of God's life and illumination. Please note, there are innumerable mistakes, run-on sentences, and grammatically improper phrases in this book. If that is a big concern to you, please give the book to someone else.
Thank you, Chintamani, for reading that. And what I would like to do is read something very important to you, but we're going to talk about the different stages for entering this teaching. Only the heart that lives completely for Lord Hari is there peace in one's life. Only when the heart lives like that is there peace. If you want to achieve peace, when the only dream and hope and reason for living, working, having fun, eating, playing, or indeed breathing is just to feel the joy of Lord Hari's happiness by one's existence. That's your daily goal. You turn your whole life over to Lord Hari. He possesses your body, and your happiness becomes his happiness. Then, when that occurs, the real dream is fulfilled. When one sees all of one's life's moments, events, and lessons as the mercy and direct teachings of Lord Hari on how to adjust, change, and guides one's life, then there is deep inner fulfillment. When one really, really surrenders their life at his divine lotus feet, they won't care for anything, nothing, but the moments in communion with beloved Lord Hari. Then he will recognize that devotee's condition. He will allow them to die to live and move into the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram. This is the transition location for continued deeper communion on their way back to Godhead. So now I'd like to describe the stages here, how to enter this graveyard of Satchidananda Sundaram. If you're serious about the teaching, you'll listen carefully. Right now, as you're listening to this, you have to ask yourself, do you want this ancient yoga teaching more than your next call or meeting with a friend, or whatever it is you do, your next view on Facebook or whatever it is you're doing? Think about it. Are you willing to feel that this teaching is more important than that? It may take a while for you to achieve that alone. That's up to you. But if you're not even at stage one, how are you going to take this teaching serious and advance? So to be in this stage, like many I know who like to jump around and chant Hare Krishna and talk and gossip and all that, they're not even beyond stage one. They're not serious about the teaching, which is fine. But the purpose of this is to help you understand that you're not serious. So if you really, really want God and only Lord Hari, then this will help you with your understanding, and you'll be able to move to that next stage. Stage two, do you want the ancient beauty really? I mean, do you really want to fall in love with God? Because the beginning, middle, and end of the whole process of Krishna consciousness is falling in love with God. It's never about anything else. Yes, you'll acquire some Ganya Sunya Bhakti, you'll acquire some knowledge, but the real teachers are teaching you that the beginning, middle, and end of the process is falling in love with Lord Hari. So you might as well start out thinking from the end, as it's called, by thinking from the beginning. That the purpose of this is to fall in love. If you really want this, stage two, then you have to ask yourself, is this teaching more important to me than my next bite of food or meal? It's not about fasting or Ekadasi and following, did you follow Ekadasi today or not? It's not about that. A lot of people do this. Oh, today's Ekadasi. Did you follow Ekadasi? Who cares? If you don't care about wanting God in this teaching more than your next bite of food or your meal, it really doesn't matter. Oh, I've been fasting for 6 days. Really? So what? I mean, congratulations on starving yourself. But if you're not in love with God and you have no intention of understanding that that's the beginning and middle and end of this teaching, it really isn't something that Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya, would have really been appreciating at all. In fact, he rejected people that came to him and said, oh, I'm living only on milk. Say, good. See you later. You can't enter the kirtan. This is at Srinivasacharya's house. That was his close friend. You can't enter the house to enjoy this rasa kirtan that we're having. Being just a dude, a cool dude. Dude means milk in India. Just fasting on dude is not a qualification. In fact, Ekadashi means one pointed service or deep concentration. Eka Dashi. One pointed service or deep concentration. What is that? That is when you're so in love with Lord Hari that the rest of the world is just blotted out, at least for that moment of your meditation, or for that one day of Ekadashi, deep pointed, one pointed service. Intense concentration on the ancient communion with the Ancient One himself and his teaching, which is what we're presenting today. This is Lord Hari's teaching. I don't need to quote scriptures. It can all be explained in English. Don't need any of these distractions, because the ego, trust me, the ahankara is going to try to find a way to avoid the teaching. So one has to ask, why are you jumping around and singing Hare Krishna and wearing dhotis and beat? Why are you doing all that if you're trying to avoid the teaching that I'm giving here right now anyway? You're more interested in LGBT or this or that. I'm telling you, you're wasting your time. I'm not saying you should give it up, but I'm saying listen carefully. Try to move to the way beyond stage one, what your friends are doing and the fake friends on Facebook. Move beyond that. Move into phase 2 and realize when you're sitting down and practicing, you should be able to sit still for an hour and chant your japa. It's good to walk too, but try it sometime. Everything should be tried. Experiment. If you don't try it, you'll never know. Sit down tight, as Srila Prabhupada used to say, and chant your whole round of 16 rounds of japa sitting in one position. Try not to move or anything. Just sit and get your concentration completely, yogically, intensely concentrate as a true sadhak on the holy name. And you will be absolutely surprised and indeed shocked at what will come out of that. Your whole day will turn into a glimmering ray of sunshine. You will see. Stage 3. This is where we're going to maybe lose some people here. But this is necessary. If nobody teaches you this, if they're afraid to teach you this, then how are you going to ever learn it? Do you want the teaching more than your next orgasm? This is the stage where the mental platform explodes, dissolves completely. You start to feel different types of explosions, which is what all an orgasm really is. You start to feel different types of explosions in your body. Rather than just ordinary common orgasm, much more profound and blissful types of explosions, which supplement or replace the desire for the standard regular orgasmic experience. So again, stage 3, these are all questions you ask to enter these stages. The questions are the answers. Do you want this teaching more than your next orgasm? What ends up happening is you become the living orgasm. You don't seek the ordinary anymore. You're already living in the desired and wanted condition of all entities from the amoeba to the god Shiva. That whole range from the amoeba to Shiva, amoeba to Shiva, every single one of those entities is desiring conventional orgasm, or they're moving in that way because of that. It's controlling their every movement and their thoughts. You have to understand this. That's why the rules and the sages teach us this is the platform to reach for. You have to reach your arm out and stretch and pull yourself up to it. Sort of like in your mind, you feel that, think that way. You don't seek the ordinary anymore. Stage 4, this is the toughest one for everyone. Once stage 3 is achieved, stage 4, do you want to enter the ancient ecstasy more than your next breath? Now, this can be felt when you're like, if you're doing pranayama breathing and you're doing like a standard repetition of 32 or 48 pranayama, fast breathing, you'll find that when you hold that final breath and then you release it, you can release it slowly and you'll be able to hold your breath longer. But this is a tool God put in the human form just as an experiment. I'm not suggesting you're going to live without breathing. I'm merely suggesting when you're doing that, feel the necessity of taking that next breath. Think about it. It's always been there, but we take it for granted. Breathing. You're breathing because you have to. And if it's not there, you panic. And if you panic more, if it doesn't come, and then you drown or whatever happened where you couldn't breathe, it's a horrible experience. We're not suggesting you do that or anything like that. I'm just saying it's when you look into how desperately you want that next breath. If you've been holding your breath a minute or 2 or 3, and the world's record, I think, is about 12 minutes, which is completely astonishing. Prior to that, it was originally held by the famous magician Houdini, who held his breath for, I think, 4.5 minutes. The whole world was talking about it. Now it's through different scientific methods. One fellow supposedly held his breath for 12 minutes. I saw it on television once. I was quite astonishing. We're not suggesting you learn not to breathe, for God's sakes. Entering the graveyard of Satchidananda is all based on asking questions to discover the answer. Questions are the answer, and that's how you enter the graveyard, is by ultimately you want God more than your next breath. And when that realization comes that you actually are feeling that way, it's not going to be you get there and then it's all set and now you're done. It's not like that. It's a lifetime of practice and following these stages. But once you get to that stage, that's right, that's when things become very exciting, because you can move into the different stages beyond that, which we'll talk about now. Chintamani Devi Dasi, our beloved host, has some questions that came in.
Hi, thank you so much, Anadinath, for sharing with us today. Yes, we have some questions that's come in from our viewers. I'll just go ahead and start reading the first question here. I read recently about devotees asking and talking about the Sarup of the Jiva. Can you talk about this?
Well, we can, and I know exactly about these things. There was a similar thing some years ago where people were wasting their time talking about whether the soul falls from Vaikuntha or falls from Brahman. I'm not going to continue the mental agitation of trying to go over that. My feedback on that is simply this: unless you've gone through the 4 stages that I've just talked about, this is where the real work is. And you've asked those questions. Do you want the ancient beauty more than your next meal or bite of food? Do you want the ancient beauty more than your next orgasm? What about the breath? Do you want it more than the next breath? Until you go in and do this type of work, it's an absolute, utter waste of time to discuss these other things, because they can't be understood by anybody unless and until, and absolutely until they have entered the graveyard of Satchit Ananda. If you look at all the genuine gurus, they're living in the graveyard of Satchit Ananda. They're not a human being. They're not a personality. They may have a title, but they don't cling to it or use it in any way to promote themselves. So the first step is following these stages, getting into the graveyard of Satchit Ananda. And yes, great pundits and people like that will discuss these things, but it is not for us Westerners who have not entered into the graveyard of Satchit Ananda. It's a waste of time. You cannot understand it from the mental platform. You just go back and forth. This person says that, this person says that. And of course, we'll rely on the conclusions of our senior followers and the experienced acharyas, but these are not relevant questions to our existence in living daily in the communion with Lord Hari.
Thank you so much for your answer, dear Anadinath Babaji Maharaj. We have our next question here. I'll just go ahead and read that. What about the teachers who share about Siddha Pranali and Raganuga Bhakti? Are they genuine?
That's a very good question, and thank you for asking that, Chintamani Devi. I'm only chuckling because we're seeing a lot of this type of talk nowadays about Siddha Pranali, which you have the Vaidhi Bhakti, which is a regular Bhakti, beginning Bhakti, where you follow rules and regulations, which are all absolutely necessary. They're all yogic requirements to this stage of Bhakti Yoga, and being a yoga sadhak is guided and protected by the rules and regulations. All yogis know this. All yogis, if you're one of these yoga fans, belong to the fan club, but you don't practice anything, that's fine. You're a member of the fan club. I would advise you not to waste the rest of your life just being a fan club member, but actually become a real yogi. But you watch Kumbh Mela films and all that. Every one of those yogis will tell you there are very strict rules to become a yogi. Anybody who says there's not is not a yogi. That's all. They're very strict rules. And I just described the stages, and those lead you to the yogic stage, or what is known as entering into the graveyard of Satchitananda. A famous guru, a well-beloved guru, who is the Siksha Guru of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, was known as, name is Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And he always uses the term die to live. He was referring to entering the graveyard of Satchitananda. Die as the personality, as the person running around trying to assert themselves as something in the form of an ego, sort of ego mind personality. Die to live and rise in the graveyard of Satchitananda. This will be permissioned by Lord Hari. When you exhibit this much devotion, as we talk about in the 4 stages, where you want God that bad, then he'll permission you to live in the graveyard. So in answer to your question, all this talk about Rasika, with the next stage is a Raganuga Bhakti. You have Vaidhi Bhakti, then you have Raganuga Bhakti. And it's a natural progression to that stage. But the funny thing is that people who enter Raganuga Bhakti don't talk about it. Did you catch that? Those who enter Raganuga Bhakti, they don't talk about it unless they're a teacher explaining, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was so merciful in giving us many literatures about that, but in a general sense. So when people are talking about it and promoting it just like as another fad or another thing, I can tell you right now it's a waste of time, because when you're following the Rasika teachings, this leads to doing Ashtakaliya Leela meditation. This is meditating on the pastimes of Krishna all day. This is very, very rare for anyone to be able to practice this, but that's where it leads. It's much harder than preaching, because you're getting up every day. Your body's completely possessed by Lord Hari, as we were talking about early. And I was giving you the steps to enter where the Lord God actually manifests in your body, and your happiness becomes his happiness. Your sadness becomes his joy and happiness too. Why? Because he's living the Leela through you. He's teaching you lessons through your life experiences, and you're surrendered to that. That's a huge stage. And I describe that only as being part of stage 2. Do you see what I mean? So just to get to that is the most important thing, instead of discussing and all these fancy names about Raganuga Bhakti and all this. It's going to occur naturally, just like falling in love with someone. Your love grows, you fall more in love with them, you go through changes, your love grows more, you get committed, you marry, maybe you have a child, you love your baby. The whole love is like a blossoming flower. It's the exact same thing with this. So to artificially, without entering these stages and artificially talking about rasa and Raganuga Bhakti, is another waste of time. If you're talking about it, what to speak if you're promoting yourself on the basis that you have so much time? How can a person who's a rasa guru have so much time to promote themselves when they're supposed to be doing Astakaliya Leela and not talking about it, but they're using it to try to promote themselves and tell all these stories and give people all this so-called information that they're not qualified to hear? You have to question that. How do they have so much time to promote themselves and talk about these things? Again, it's a natural progression. You'll see your life by shutting up and chanting, your life will naturally progress towards what's called the Anuraga stage. Anuraga, if you break the word apart, it's like a little, I use it like for fun, a little bit combination English and Indian language. Anu, or a new raga, like a new raga. Raga is like we hear a raga, we think like an Indian, like Ravi Shankar, or I write ragas on guitar. And it's like, oh, I got a new raga. Well, a new raga, Anu raga, is a stage that you naturally progress in when you start moving out of Vaidhi Bhakti. And once you get one experience of 1/2 of a millidrop of Anuraga, your life becomes so blissful and ecstatic, you won't think about anything else. What to speak of going around and trying to teach that to people? It can't be taught. You can hint at things, but without these 4 stages I just gave you, it's a waste of time. If you can't get off your social networks, it's a waste of time. If you can't stand and go for 2 hours without having to eat something, and then ooh, this is really good, and then complaining, oh, it's too hot, it's too much turmeric, and all this agitation or food, you're not ready, you're not even close. Shut up and chant is the answer. You have to chant if you're serious about the teaching. Now, if you absolutely don't really want this teaching, that's fine. You don't have to, but the problem is to pretend that you do, you're only damaging yourself. And ultimately, it's known as aparad, or offense, to the teaching itself and the sampradaya. But I'm just saying, just say, I really, really, really don't want this teaching. But if you do, I've given you the stages. But I'm just saying, all this talk about rasa practice and everything is only for a rare few people, and they're not going to talk about it much, except in close circles. Others who are in anuraga will possibly seek higher teachings for advancement, not in a large, happy, goofy group gathering, but a very private one-on-one with another rasa guru who's well known. And you'll have to pull it out of him. You'll have to stay at his ashram for a week or two. He'll have to observe you and telepathically read into you if you're even ready to hear anything from him. It's not a pop cultural thing. It's just more BS. My advice, if you care to listen to it, is chant 32 rounds a day, shut up and chant. And as our beloved Gorky Sordas Babaji said, everything is in the chanting. The chanting will answer all your questions. The chanting will reveal your Siddha Pranali to you. You don't have to necessarily go to a guru to reveal it to you. If you chant intensely and saturate your life with Harinam, your Siddha Pranali will be revealed to you, and you'll understand your Swarup. How come they don't do that? They just mentally go on and on and on. This sastra, that sastra, this. I'm telling you, it's turned into a whole cultural aparad. Everybody will do all that, but all the time they spend with this, that, this sastra, that, so-and-so says this, all that time could be spent chanting the holy name on beads, on japa, and all those questions will be answered. And this is the real teaching of the acharyas.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we've got one last question here. Can you discuss sannyas and Babaji type initiations or designations?
Well, thank you. Another nice question, and thanks to the reader who wrote that. This is another popular hoax that's going on. And this was long ago in the West, this all kind of started. Not a hoax. It's not a hoax to take a sannyas initiation. It's very serious. That's the first thing, is it's very serious. A Babaji initiation is very similar to sannyas. There's some slight differences, but they're not important. If you've understood what I said about the 4 stages in it or two, and you're crystal clear on those, notice I explained them crystal clear, all in English. I didn't use any fancy Vedic sastra quotes or anything, although I could have. But what I'm trying to help you understand is that it's very natural and can be explained in English. Look, Lord Krishna explained this teaching to the sun god Surya, according to the Bhagavad Gita, millions of years ago. The Lord said, I explained this teaching millions of years ago, the sun god. And we're talking about the solar and lunar dynasties, the ancient, millions of years ago. We can't even perceive what millions, not million. Try to picture 1,000 years ago. Okay, 2,000 years ago. Well, that was around the time of Jesus. Wow, that's like antiquity. You go back a little further and you get into the writings of Vedic writings of sastra that goes beyond that. But picture 1,000,000 years ago, picture 100,000 years, now 1,000,000, and now millions. You see? So this goes back to the ancient solar and lunar dynasties. And that's where, when those dynasties existed, they were run by great, great rishis beyond any type of yogic achievement we can imagine. It wasn't even achievement. They were just natural siddhas. And we're going to be having an upcoming class very soon that's going to be called Siddha Leela, Siddha Swarup. And I'm going to talk about these things there, and we'll get into it. I'm going to show you how to commune with the ancient siddhas. You'll really like it. But in answer to this question, for example, I had a Babaji initiation back in 1984. Babaji is a little different. Sannyas is under all these really strict rules, as a Babaji is too. But Babaji can move a little freer in terms of the society and things like that. They're not as much under rules of association and things like that. And that's fine. It's not that important. But here's the problem, is when people use these titles to simply increase the ahankar, which is the problem itself. That's the whole meaning of our book, Shut Up and Chant, is to take apart the bastard, what I call the bastard, because in the Vedic scriptures, Maya, or illusion, is represented as a witch. And the witch has given birth to a bastard, which is an illegitimate progeny. And that is the ahankar, the false ego. This false ego literally designed the universe we're living in now. And we can see that how the false ego is designing universes within the universes, namely a lot of these big giant telecom companies and everything are trying to make you think the way they want you to think. Do you see what I mean? So the ego, or ahankar, is like never ending just in the regular world. But when you drag in spiritual practitioners into that, and they start saying, oh, he's been a sannyas for 30 years and he's a this and that, and he got this initiation, he got that initiation, and you're selling that, or that person. And we see a lot of this where those people with those initiates try to sell that as a reason why you should pay attention to them. Whereas the real sannyas, a Vaishnav sannyas, always has tears in their eyes, or their eyes are always wet, and they rarely blink. Sometimes they blink, but they're always filled with this deep, intense love of Lord Hari, and they're not using their title for anything. There are certain other titles like Pandit and things like that, which are designations from the Vedic community for someone who's made a certain level of achievement in Nigaya or some of these different types of disciplines of language and philosophy. And that's all that's excellent and fine. All I'm saying, though, to use these titles to try to pretend to be someone, quote, important, it's a little bit, especially in the West, because we're so unqualified for this teaching in so many ways. My advice, once again, is if they've taken those titles, then they'll understand the 4 steps and they will have achieved those. And when I say moving into the graveyard of Satchidananda, they will understand that. Most that I've met do not. I'm just telling you, most that I've met over the last 45 years do not understand that. So what does that tell you? So I guess all I'm saying is we just want to not turn that into another kind of fan club. I've met sannyasis that were way too young, and they pop out of sannyas. They're back searching for orgasm, and within a year or two, really goofy stuff like that, really goofy. To take vows in front of the fire and then just, oops, I'm a little agitated for that pretty girl over there. Oh, okay, forget the sannyas. It's not like that. These are not serious practitioners. So that's what we represent here on Real Yoga Mission. We're not trying to be anything but loving and caring for people who really, really want this teaching. That's all. It's no big deal. If you want this teaching, we'll have a lot of great classes for you, and I hope you like them. So get the book, Shut Up and Chant, and I think it'll make you happy. But let me just read something to you in closing. This is a short class today. I just wanted to read you this poem. This will take a couple minutes, but I think if you really pay attention, you'll understand about how important it is to take this ahankar apart. I can tell you this, though. The main component of this ahankar is what I call the donkey of doubt. The donkey of doubt doubts everything. Everything you think and comes, always doubting. They doubt themselves into poverty. They doubt themselves down into just a really low self-image. They doubt themselves. Even when they do get a big image, they assert it through the ahankar. Then they get up there, but internally they're doubting. So the first thing is taking this donkey of doubt apart. But at that point, you start to realize something really beautiful. That only love takes the ahankar apart. eyes look away when I smile? Does your heart withdraw and contract and not? Who's fooling who? Do you think God does not see all this idiotic foolishness? Do you think the universe is pleased by conceit? Do you think the heart is satisfied by such attempts at spiritual fraud? Can't you hear the angels cry? Can't you feel the devils play? O angelic soul, who are you? Where are you at? Are you about total love this exact instance? Or are you worried in doubt and fear? Oh friend, only love takes the ahankar apart. Only that massive, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching type of love that can handle someone like you. Only someone so in love that can handle a big boy or girl like you. Can you allow yourself to be taken apart in front of God? To stand strong against the farce of non-love? It takes the ultimate courage, the ultimate sacrifice. It takes the ultimate spiritual warrior. Sacrifice is its own reward. Ecstasy is its own gift to itself. Yes, ecstasy is its own gift to itself. Are you willing to die to live, to kill the disease of non-love? How long will you play this game? How long, oh bastard? When will you release your grip of idiocy? Oh bastard, your game is over. You've been found out. Just listen. We may be a big guru or pandit, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very rich and beautiful, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very scientific and intelligent, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very sexy and attractive, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very gentle and sweet and stupid, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very good and honest and trustworthy, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be perfectly realized and spiritually strong, but only love takes that ahankar apart. We may be very regular and normal and non-committed, nonchalant, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very athletic and muscular with a great bod, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very evil and expert and cunning and criminal and sick and fucked up, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very detached and cool and relaxed, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very surrendered and humble and obedient, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very powerful and political, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be gay, lesbian, hetero, or bi, but only love takes the ahankar of that BS apart. We may have done some very secret, naughty things, but only love takes the ahankar apart. We may be very simple, innocent, and honest, but only love takes the ahankar apart. I swear to you all, only love will ever, ever take the ahankar apart. We may pretend that we understand these words, but only love will ever take the ahankar apart.